building a reflection of ourselves so that we know clearly and directly and truly who we are. We have talked about the practices of mindfulness and metta and compassion, and forgiveness, all these beautiful energies we have been together cultivating courageous effort and of mindfulness and of relinquishment and renunciation and of generosity and all the yogi jobs that we've done, and the ways that we have offered support to each other. And I wonder if you have contemplated, like, what is the mechanism that allows these energies to actually become the engine of transformation, or the engine, the dynamic of transformation. And the Buddha names this dynamic and there are traditions that lift this dynamic up as the very most important area of the Dharma to contemplate and to understand, and that is the dynamic of karma. And so karma is the actual kind of totally amazing part of every one of our minds. All human beings have it, and that is the quality of intention in the mind. And so I want to backtrack a little bit to talk about I know we want something open, but like, can I not be the one that has most of the opening? Because I already have a cold. Could we open the door a little bit if you want more air? It just depends on how much air you want. Thanks. Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just sort of going to weave in some of the themes that you suggested, and so this is something that I talk about a lot, and I'm because it is central to understanding the Dharma. Someone came to me after our group sharing and said, "Can you talk about loneliness?" And I want to weave that theme into what I'm saying and some of the other things that we've shared. We actually, in reality, are a flow no different than the flow of the nutrients from the earth into the tree roots, through the trunk into the branches, breathing in air and releasing carbon dioxide, and then releasing oxygen, and in this process supporting the fungus that actually grow on other roots of other trees, building a network, a live relationship between all these different energies of oxygen and carbon dioxide, and the work that fungus do on the roots and bringing into being leaves and flowers and expelling and drinking in. All of that, when we look at a tree or a forest, is actually also representative of us, that we are also in this non-separate interrelationship of life, and that this flow, like the mechanisms of the tree, there is a particular flow that is an expression of a similar life force. What this points to is that there is nothing separate and outside of this life force. We, like the tree in its expression, are expressing ourselves through different moments of consciousness. And that those different moments of consciousness are coming and going really, really quickly, so that it feels like a movie, that we are continuous, but actually we are one moment of consciousness coming and going, and then another moment very, very fast, so that the experience is, oh, this is me. In each moment of consciousness, there is a set of qualities that are always present. And one is the capacity to make contact with an object. So we know when we see and we hear, we think that there's some plan, some conductor orchestrating this plan of how this mind-body process is responding. But actually, whenever there is a sound, together with the sound is ear consciousness, not some great organizer in the middle of us somewhere, or in our brain or in our heart, but just the mechanism of when there's sound, the sound and ear consciousness co-arise together. Or when there's sight, eye consciousness and the visual object co-arise together in consciousness. And you can go on, right? When there's thought, mind consciousness, when there's taste, right? Then there's the taste, tongue consciousness. Then when there's touch, there's body consciousness. So there are 6 types of consciousness co-arising all the time, according to what object is predominant in the moment, so that we could be reading something and someone closes the door and we don't hear it. So then there's no ear consciousness arising. There's just eye consciousness and mind consciousness arising all the time. We're seeing the letters on the page, and then there's mind consciousness arising. So we, like the tree, are this just movement and response to the external and to the internal world. The good news about that is that because we're this movement of consciousness arising and passing away, actually there is no existential separation and isolation of our being, that we're constantly in interaction. And the people who are arahants, they say that when we get very sensitive, it's like kind of a chore. That's what's happening all the time. That the sense bases are constantly through contact, arising and passing and arising and passing. So then, in this moment of consciousness, there is always contact with an object. Then there's always perception that happens, perceiving what the object is according to our education and conditioning. And then there's always volition or intention. In every moment of consciousness, there is always intention. And what is intention? It's the orientation towards the wholesome or the unwholesome. Essentially, it's the orientation between the wholesome and the unwholesome. That is, we're not thinking about it necessarily. So let's say, I thought to myself, my digestive system is a little upset. I don't think I'm going to eat dinner just to give my system a rest. And then I'm finished meeting with Dena, and I'm walking back towards my house, and I smell the smell coming from the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And my intention totally changes. And I am like, no, I think I will have dinner, actually. And so I'm like, dinner's a little bit late. I'm like looking at the sunshine. Some of you are sitting at the table, and because I have a little bit more space, I'm reflecting on my intention, and I'm like, okay, I could let dinner go. Those decisions, we are making that kind of decision quickly, so quickly all the time. Every moment we lift up our foot to take a step, there are tons of intentions lifting up that step. Some of the intentions actually are neutral. That is, there is no karmic consequence. Like, oh, I'm going to take a step, and there's nothing really, the step is neutral. There's a lifting, there's a placing, and it's just neutral. But many of our intentions are not neutral. And why is this important? Because our intentions are the causative factor for our suffering or our liberation. How are they? Because if the intention brings unwholesome results, then that means the intention is building suffering in our lives, and therefore the lives of other people, because we're always connected. And if the intention is wholesome, then it's building the conditions for freedom and liberation. And just like a drip, I don't know if you've experienced this in your house or somewhere else, where you're like, oh, this is not such a bad drip. I'm not going to call the plumber. I'll just put a container under the drip. And isn't it amazing how quickly that container fills up? Just drip, drip, drip. That's our mind. Intention, intention, drip, drip, drip. And a force is built through that drip, 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 or intention, intention, intention. And that's through that we build, through those intentions, we build the strength of the beautiful energies or of the harmful energies. I know you've heard me say this, but just to clarify it again, because we just need to hear it all the time. What are the harmful energies there are? Let's brainstorm. Greed, hatred, anger, confusion, delusion, sloth and torpor, ill will, anxiety, fear, revenge, jealousy, craving, clinging, attachment, holding on, defensiveness. All those energies have four characteristics that are common to them that build suffering. So actually, I'll stop there. So what are the four characteristics that are part of all those energies we just brainstormed? Some of you have heard me give this Dharma talk so many times, not to put you on the spot. Yes, exactly. They all don't have discernment. They all have the characteristic of delusion or ignorance. And the definition of ignorance is not seeing reality as it really is. It's also the incapacity to see harm and suffering and where they lie. So part of the shared qualities is that there's confusion and we can't discern actually the consequences and ramifications through believing or feeding these energies, attaching to them. We have no fear, because we can't see the suffering in them, we have no fear in harming ourselves and others, or no shame. They're two words. They're I don't have the Pali, too bad. I didn't bring the Pali. Hiri and another one. And lastly, so confusion, we can't see the suffering in those energies. We're just confused, like we're in a fog. Because we're in a fog and we can't discern, we don't have any fear in harming, both through our body and through our mind, those two. And lastly, the mind is restless. That has no capacity to settle and to calm and to discern, therefore, what's going on, because it's agitated all the time. So even though we might not know it, these four qualities are present in any moment when we say, I am outraged. I cannot believe that person just said something. Like pissed off. I'm pissed off. Not only do I feel pissed off, I feel justified. What that person did was unconscionable. It's amazing. I mean, it blows my mind when I think that I both feel so right about my stance, and the Buddha's telling me the total opposite, that I'm not discerning reality at all, that I'm not seeing suffering where there is suffering, and I'm not scared to harm in this outrage. You know, that's why Trump has been such a good teacher to me. Because he's such a beautiful reflection of my own mind in those places where we're outraged and we just give the truth, we think the truth of that outrage, and we're willing to harm in it. But we don't discern it. We don't know that's what we're doing because we feel like we're in the right. We feel justified in our anger. And that's true for all those energies. So when at the beginning of this retreat I said, drop, when you have a thought that is an expression of these energies, drop the thought. Because by continuing to think it, we're feeding the energy. If we can drop the thought associated with this energy and drop into the body, we shared this in the Q&A, and drop into the body and feel the energy in the body, we begin to come closer to the suffering, right? If we can bring in caring to hold that energy, then it just becomes an energetic expression and it's not harmful anymore. Because there's caring and mindfulness present in relationship to it. And then there's nothing driving it anymore. We're not attached to it. When we feel separate or lonely or not at home, which we feel a lot, or at least some of the time, a lot some of the time, and then some of the time. It's not because of who we are, it's because these energies are in our minds and we're believing it. Whenever we feel I don't belong, no one likes me, no one loves me, I don't have a family, and I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, I'm insufficient, or the opposite, I have the right way. I'm good. I do not need to change. We are being like captured as the tree is part of a reality, and just because of reality we're part of things, as we are inherently part of things, the times that we're not, it's not that we don't belong, it's because we're caught in one of these energies, and these energies bring about this experience of being in a fog and of being separate, of being isolated, of not feeling good enough, of not being loved. And when this culture supports believing these energies, then we're really in a tangle. We're entangled in a tangle. If there's mindfulness, which is the exact opposite of ignorance, if there's mindfulness, then there's the capacity to begin to discern these energies. And that's why mindfulness is such a revolutionary quality, because it clarifies what was confused. It's like, oh, this is what's happening. I'm believing this. It's not reality, it's just that I'm believing this. I'm believing that Dharma talk I just gave was terrible, and I'm going to go to Alexei and tell him he has to destroy the filming of it because it was so awful. And maybe I should consider stopping teaching because it's just too hard and difficult. I mean, that's what we do. And it could be the opposite. I'm aversive, so I go to that. But it could be that Dharma talk was, I'm so good, I should write a book. Or was it, what was my Dharma talk about? I forget. When we watch the news and we watch, some of the violence that's being expressed, it's so clear to us that the minds that are making these decisions are in ignorance, confusion, and delusion, caught in greed or anger. It's just so clear to us, And I think I mentioned this before, but it's just came up in my memory. I went to an Afrikaner school in Johannesburg where I grew up. And it was a very, from the 1800s, honestly. When I was picked on a lot by this teacher, Mr. Engelbrat. He had this huge ruler that he would draw lines on the blackboard, about that, and about this thick. And he would call me into the front of the room and make me bend down and hit me. And I can even sharing with you that just incredible shame and pain of that experience over and over again. That mind, not getting into blame, because then I'm in ignorance again, but that mind that couldn't discern the harm. That's our mind too. When we're caught in some ideology of discipline in this case, and of correcting this rebellious student, control, I guess anger, there must have been anger in his mind to do it, or fear, maybe fear, wanting to control, through corporal punishment. But we all want to control in our own ways too. And so what's beautiful about just lifting up an example is that it highlights our own mind and mechanism. So any thought or action that comes out of the unwholesome energies rooted in confusion and ignorance automatically brings harm and suffering. And mindfulness discerns that. Mindfulness illuminates that. And that's why we keep practicing mindfulness. Because then we're oh my God, I can see my mind turning against itself in anger. I can see it. I'm why am I doing that? I don't want to. When you see it, then it's so clear. And you're no, I am then, so there's mindfulness. And then there's the intention not to do it anymore. So you can see how mindfulness is the beginning of the liberatory process of saying, no, I can discern the suffering and I want to end it. And then there's the intention. I unhook. I withdraw my mind from believing that, from feeding it. And then I come to my body, or I say to myself, I'm replacing that energy with a wholesome energy. Arinna, I really appreciate that you unhooked from that. And then I'm in the stream of the wholesome. All the unwholesome energies always bring suffering when we identify with them and their storylines. All the wholesome energies always bring liberation. That's where faith lives, in understanding this dynamic. Faith in the Dharma is not, we can certainly have faith in the beautiful qualities that our teachers exhibit, and in the Buddha as a totally amazing teacher. It's not so much about them per se, but that they reflect this dynamic, that it is possible through the practice of mindfulness and intention to transform, to let go of the energies that harm, and to cultivate and grow the wholesome energies that liberate and heal. And I've mentioned this, of course, everything I'm saying I've mentioned before because I've been teaching for like 30 plus years. So, but just to, when we take some person like the Buddha, he almost killed himself through starvation and asceticism. Like he had the idea that he was attached. He had this idea that this was going to bring him liberation, was to practice this radical asceticism. It said that he was so close to death that before his enlightenment, that when he touched his stomach, he could feel his spine. That's how skinny he was. And at some point, he recognized this is not the path to liberation, right? So he himself was caught, and then there was this moment of recognition of mindfulness. This is not the path. And he remembered when he was a child watching he was in his father's palace, watching some people developing their skill in sword play or something like that. And he was sitting watching them, and as he sat and watched them, his mind dropped into a calm, a great steadiness and concentration, and he was permeated with awareness, and he remembered that from his childhood, and he said, this is what I'm going to practice. So when we really grok the depth and power of mindfulness and intention, then in a way, there's never a time when I don't want to say that there's never a time, but there are many times where we have capacity to connect with ourselves in ways that support our well-being and freedom. The generational passing on of ignorance through harming, not even intentionally, that the way that the harm happens from parents to children who become parents to children, that the way that harming happens, or in our schools, wherever it is, in our justice system, not justice system, in the policing state system of control. It is impossible not to take some of those energies and use them as a defense for survival. And some of those defenses go deep inside of our being. And I really want to acknowledge that. We know we're defended. We know that we get triggered. And so in talking about this mindfulness and intention, I don't in any way want to make it sound like it's just easy and plain sailing. And if we can't do it, it's because there's something wrong with us. The depth of the transmission of wounding and the defense that's automatically developed with those same energies, like taking anger and turning it out in, and we see that in gun violence, or turning it in towards ourselves. That the ways that we take those energies and use it as a defense is real. And so it's not just that we're like, okay, may I love. I see my suffering, I'm calling in love, may I love. And then all of that suddenly disappearing, right? It's like surgery. It's like just disentangling moment after moment. Oh, here. Oh, here. Oh, okay, I've really made a lot of effort. Let me take a break. Let me rest a little bit to come back again. Oh, this is like a lot of inner defense that I'm hitting. Oh, let me go for a walk and sing. Let me raise some energy so that I can have some connection outside of the energy of depression or of dissociation or of isolation or whatever our defense is. We all have our own particular combination of defense. So it's like we're musicians composing orchestral piece or a piece for many instruments. We're like, oh, I need a little this, and oh, I need a little this, oh, and I need this, to bring in and create the balance that the heart-mind needs in order to do this work. That is we know, because we're all in this work already. We know that often it isn't easy, though there are times when it is. So the core driver of transformation is the recognition of the reality of the way suffering comes into being and the ending of suffering. And that's the Buddha's teaching, just there. Suffering from the unwholesome energies and identifying and feeding with them, and the ending of it through being mindful and the use of intention to unhook and then to build and strengthen through the wholesome energies. Because when you dismantle, then you need to build, right? And so you asked about ending capitalism or imperialism or colonialism. That's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's dismantling the harmful and building the beautiful, the wholesome. And we know. I want to backtrack because I don't want to preface the sentence with we know. I have come to retreats either through teaching or participating as a yogi since I was 29. There hasn't been an extended time when I haven't retreated because I need retreats to remember this and to go more deeply into understanding this dynamic. Now, it might be some of you come in more awakened than me, and so you don't need retreats so much, but I did. And I did because this way of coming together and caring for each other is like the reminder of our capacities. And then we go out and swim against the stream and we get tired and exhausted and we have to come back and refresh ourselves and remember again. And then at some point, the formal retreats perhaps stop. I don't know because I'm not an arahant. But even for people that I've been close with, they never stop retreating even when they're arahants. So just this like supporting actively the mind just then it's not hard work anymore. But that Deepa Ma used to do walking meditation. She didn't have to. She would just retreat and do walking meditation and practice. Just because that was the mind. That was the mind. The mind wanted that. So the uphill battle becomes a lot easier. Then it's more plain sailing. So that's the essential. The map. When you ask me, Lindy, what are those 5 things? They're incorporated in this, and the other beautiful qualities. So generosity is such a generosity is considered, one of the tripods of the Dharma. Dana, Sila, Panya. Generosity, ethical living, and the mind, wisdom, concentration. Yeah. So refraining from harming, living ethically, generosity, and all the beautiful qualities of patience and truthfulness, and the equanimity and calm and concentration and mental pliability and flexibility. There are these beautiful energies that we can practice, and we don't actually need to be in a retreat to practice them. Our daily lives invite us and call us to practice them. And because we're dedicated to our liberation, then we don't fall so much into our defense of like, oh, I can't be bothered. Then we're like, oh, I can. Like I was talking with someone about insomnia, I can't remember who, and saying when I can't sleep, which is these days been often every night actually, I'm like, I get out of bed. I'm like, no, I know that's right effort. I have to get out of bed and like do walking meditation or yoga. because otherwise my mind just gets more and more irritated. So we just like, oh yeah, I want to take care of my mind, so I make the effort. And we do that, right? Yeah. Or like, I'm going to do yoga, or I'm going to call someone I know. That's not so much right effort as caring. I'm going to make the effort to call. Is there anything I've said that you haven't understood?
I understand, but I was really intrigued by the karmic that you opened up with.
So karma is that every intention that has a negative, unwholesome quality associated with it will bear the fruit of that energy. Thanks for lifting that up, MPA. Every intention that has an unwholesome energy associated with it will bear the fruit of that unwholesome energy. So just like an apple seed won't give you a pineapple plant, it'll give you an apple tree. Every unwholesome energy associated with an intention, like saying something, speaking with anger, then you're sowing the seed of anger in your being. And any intention to be generous will sow the seed of generosity. And because of that law, every wholesome energy that we enact and feed, every wholesome energy will build the movement and power of our transformation. So that's why I said in the forgiveness meditation, if I can't forgive myself now, instead of going to judgment, then, right? Because, oh God, what's wrong with me? How come I can't forgive myself? Then I go to, may I be able to in the future, taking the intention and moving it into the wholesome. May I be able to. Like, so, in the mornings, it's been really cold, so today it's been maybe a month that I haven't gone outside, but in the morning, because I'm up a lot, just like at 4 or 5 a.m. I go outside and I take my tea and I offer metta to the 4 directions, and then I say, may I be a channel for the Dharma. Like, may I be a channel for the Dharma. And the metta and the channel for the Dharma are my intentional activity against the irritation of not sleeping another night. Like, all of that is because I didn't sleep. And because I didn't sleep, it's easy to be irritable. So I'm protecting my mind by going out and offering metta to all the directions and saying, may I be a channel for the Dharma.
So I think I know maybe what the answer would be, but so I've been a very angry person all my life.
Yeah.
So I probably sowed a lot of seeds in me.
Right.
So, but in thinking about like almost like one good intention can almost cancel all the seeds.
Yes, that's such a great question. That is such a great question. So, so actually, if you have a small cup of water and you put a pinch of salt in, the water's really salty. But if you have a huge lake and you put a pinch of salt in, you can't taste the salt. So when the mind is more purified, then the karmic consequences of our negative actions, you can't taste them. if when the mind is really purified, because it doesn't rock the mind anymore. The mind is so spacious. So, you know, if I'm that's in response to the general ways we've been unwholesome. Like Angulimala, who killed, how many people did he kill? How many? Yeah, he killed a lot of people. He awakened fully, but all the villagers would throw fruit at him because they knew him and he had harmed them. But he understood why. So even though his mind wasn't upset, it stayed in equanimity. He did experience the karmic results of his murders. So, and also just to say that because in this tradition in Buddhism, there is the understanding of reincarnation. It's also possible that we don't bear the fruits in this lifetime. It might be that we bear the fruits of unwholesome energies in another lifetime. So it's not a linear relationship. It's a conditional relationship. As conditions change, different things are surfaced. So, and that's why the Buddha said that you can't actually predict karma because conditions are so complex. Like you can't say, oh, you're poor because you murdered someone. You know, you just can't say that. But you can say every wholesome energy that's identified with and acted on will bring more unwholesome energy. So let me, because I know it's, I just found a poem I hadn't read to you yet, which seems kind of amazing. Here, this, someone must have given this to me. So let me end with this. It's a poem that's by Roger Keyes, and it says, Hokusai says, look carefully, pay attention, notice, keep looking, stay curious. There is no end to seeing. Look forward to getting old, keep changing. You just get more who you really are. Get stuck, accept it. Repeat yourself as long as it is interesting. Keep doing what you love. Keep praying. Every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Every one of us has a body. Every one of us is frightened. Every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. Everything is alive. Shells, building, people, fish, mountains, trees. Wood is alive. Water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside of us. Live with the world inside of you. It doesn't matter if you draw or write books. It doesn't matter if you saw wood or catch fish. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda or the shadows of the trees and grasses in your garden. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. Satisfaction and strength is life living through you. Peace is life living through you. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Look, feel. Let life take you by the hand. Let life live you. Let's take a moment together. Intending for the words that connected to you, the teachings that made sense, to allow them into the body and mind. Let them be nourished and grow. May they bless us. May all that wasn't helpful or didn't make sense dissolve, flow back into the emptiness. As a community, may we water and support each other's seeds of understanding, of love, of freedom. May we be our own caretaker and each other's caretaker. In this way, may we create the fields for new ways of being and caring in our relationships, in our communities, in the places where we work. Changing from the unwholesome to the wholesome. Warriors of liberation.